This time on Filmwrecker, we are looking at Superman. The big blue Boy Scout has been the star of 8 theatrically released films going all the way back to 1951. Even further, if you count the movie serials of the 40s, it's fitting that the Kryptonian known as the world's first superhero was also the first to make a big splash on the silver screen, but it hasn't all been up, up, and away. So let's count them down from the box office kryptonite to the true super films. Number 8, Superman and the Mole Men. It is fascinating to look back at where it all started. I know that Kirk Alyn actually did it first with the highly successful movie serials of the 40s, but George Reeves was the first to do it in true movie form, even if it's not an hour long and has maybe 8 total minutes of actual Superman. And if we're being honest here, Mole Men isn't a particularly good film, even for its time. It's mostly Clark Kent solving the world's easiest mysteries and Soups with his hands on his hips talking to a town full of racists, but it is fun in a classic Ed Wood-style B-movie way, and you can see some of the roots of what was to come, especially with Lois Lane. Number 7, Superman 3. The third entry in the main Superman franchise is the ultimate example of the dangers of studio interference. After Richard Donner was let go by the producers partway through the second film, the main voice of reason was gone. Though things still might have been at least a little bit interesting if the studio would have accepted the original, albeit flawed, script that included Brainiac, Supergirl, and Mr. Mxyzptlk, which I cannot say correctly. Instead, the studio decided that they could make more money by using the film as a vehicle for hot comedy star Richard Pryor. Unfortunately, they didn't give him much of a script to work with, and Gus Gorman's screen time cut Soups to almost a minor player in his own film. He spends much of his time romancing Lana Lang, showing he's a jerk by straightening landmarks and fighting himself in existential junk battles. It's a movie made up of only the stuff that probably should have been left on the cutting room floor. Number 6, Superman 4. After the debacle of Superman 3, there was a much-needed change of producers, and the series at least went back to being about Superman, albeit with a shoestring budget and a questionable villain. The good news is that everything in 3 is forgotten. Lex and Lois are back, and the first half of the movie is almost certainly better than you remember. And it has a nice quick runtime. The bad news is the radioactive man is kind of a bore, and the action scenes are weirdly slow and silent. On balance, it would be a stretch to say that it's good, but it honestly isn't that bad. Number 5, Superman Returns. After an almost 20-year hiatus from the big screen, Superman finally made his comeback, though surprisingly not in a reboot, but a straight sequel to the Richard Donner films. Superman Returns follows Superman after his return from a field trip to space in which he learned very little. Director Bryan Singer admits that this movie didn't really work, and if he had to do it over, he would cut the first chunk, change the ending, and speed up the pacing, but it's not all bad. Brandon Routh actually does a solid job as the lead, and there are a few nice tie-ins to the early films and a throwback tone that generally works, but Singer is right about the pacing, and the last act gives Spinning the Globe Backwards a run for its money for ludicrous super logic. Number 4, Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. I feel like I'm saying this a lot with this list, but this film isn't as bad as many suggest. Admittedly, the tone is too edgy, the Martha Link falls flat, and Doomsday's mostly a bust, but it is cool to see Bruce and Clark finally share the big screen, no matter what the context. Boy Genius version of Lex does kind of work, and Wonder Woman's first foray into the DCU is almost cool enough to propel all the rest of it into the plus column. It's one of those glass exactly half full / empty situations. It has plenty of faults for anyone who wants to find them, but if you're in a lenient mood and do a bit of well-placed scene skipping, there is an okay movie beneath that messy surface. Number 3, Man of Steel. How cool were those trailers? I was psyched. Then mostly unknown actor Henry Cavill looked exactly the part. Zod was back, the suit looked just the right amount of updated while still being classic, but did it deliver? Well, kind of. There are some terrific looking scenes. The flying's breathtaking, Michael Shannon kills it, the fortress is rad, the battles are so hard hitting, the fallout was felt in future films, but it doesn't quite get all the way there. Cavill makes a great stoic Superman, but has all the warmth and emotional range of wet Melba toast. The product placement's almost Jurassic World levels of distracting, Jonathan Kent's a bit of a nutcase, and there is a pacing problem. However, on the whole, the terrific supporting cast is enough to propel it through most of the flaws, and it does feel like Superman. A bit modern, a bit edgy, but still Superman. Number 2, Superman. The 1978 original was a cultural phenomenon and basically paved the way for all the superhero movies that followed, and that is high praise, but it is well deserved. What is generally considered to be the first modern superhero movie gets it almost completely right. Richard Donner finds the balance between cartoon and believable. Williams created one of the all-time classic soundtracks. Hackman and Kidder both dive into everything 100%, and Christopher Reeve was born to play the lead. This is one of those movies that sunk itself into my mind as a kid. It fully captured my imagination, time rewinding and all. It's a classic that embraces its inherent corniness in a way that makes it timeless. It would take more than a decade for any other hero to have a debut that came even close. Number 1, Superman 2. While the first modern film did everything right, the follow-up did it just a little bit better. But before we get into Superman 2, we do have to talk about the Lester versus Donner elephant in the room and which version is better. And while Richard Donner's version would get my nod, I would argue that both movies are great films. Donner nails the action, has more Lex, gets rid of the cellophane S, and overall improves the flow of the movie. But some of Lester's humor works. The loss of powers feels a little bit better. The Eiffel Tower scene is good, and he at least tries to fix the problem of having a second time travel ending. The thing is, with either version, the second Christopher Reeve outing has the best baddies of the entire series. A relationship with Lois that finally gets to the next level, even if it ends up getting retconned, and there is a real character arc. It also has the best pacing of the bunch. It hits the ground running and it never lets up. No matter how you cut it or which cut you watch, this is a great movie. I say watch both versions and thank me later. And that is it. I have a feeling much of the debate on this one will be between 1 and 2 and Lester versus Donner, so please let me know how you feel in the comments. Also, who should don the cape next, and will Brainiac ever finally get in a movie? Please put him in a movie. Also, please like and subscribe, and hopefully I will see you all next time.